welcome to Open Source Friday here with Ryan, the maintainer and author of Caracal. We're excited to have you join us, Ryan. Excited to hear a little bit more about your background. And my name's Kevin Crosby. I lead some of our open source funding programs here at GitHub and really spend a lot of time helping the maintainers accelerate their projects. Super excited to have everyone join us today and looking forward to diving in on Caracal today. So maybe Ryan, would love to have you kind of jump in and share a little bit more about your background in open source and just an introduction to yourself before we jump into Caracal.
Yeah, so sure. So first of all, thanks for having me today on this studio. So myself, I'm Ryan. I'm based in India, and my whole background is in open source, and I'm involved with Linux Foundation. So I'm a lab leader for Linux Foundation project Gitmesh, and I'm founder of Garudex Labs, where we are working with Caracal and other projects. So I'm from a background where I'm completely into open source and building infra level stuff and everything. So I do visit different open source summits. I go as a speaker, tell more about open source and make projects which I feel kind of cool. So that was more about me. So I am completely into open source and startups and everything.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Would love to hear a little bit more kind of how you got into open source and how you actually started to run some of the Linux Foundation labs around this space. I think that's a journey that people don't always stumble into. So, curiously give some thoughts around how you
Uh,
found it, what got you excited about it.
Yeah, so kind of my journey is surprisingly cool because I started as an LFX mentee. So I cleared Linux Foundation's mentorship program, and I was working into a project where during the project I was involved with two of my mentors who were from Linux Foundation itself. So I was working with them. I found some of the bugs which his project was facing, so just I tried to solve her problem. So I created a project named Gitmesh there, and I just told her that you can use it, and also the other projects under Linux Foundation can use it to improve and those stuff. So she was quite supportive and quite helpful. So she just told me that why not you just show it to a senior dev engineer right in the Linux Foundation. So it's similar to as I am showing the project right now. So I page line showed the project to the Linux Foundation leadership. So during that meet and everything, they were super interested in the project and everything. So I shared more and more about the project. I created the prototype soon, and then the project started to work on. So later they gave me an opportunity to lead the project as in lab leader. And in November last year, I went as a speaker in Open Source Summit Korea. So I presented Gitmesh and everything there. So one thing which I find cool about open source and with Linux Foundation was I get to touch with people who are CEOs and CTOs of big enterprises, which you generally don't get to touch with in normal startups or proprietary ones. So during my summit, I saw Linus Torvalds first time face to face, which was kind of cool because I'm a Linux user. So it was a dream for me. So from that part, I started to build projects in open source. In December, I went to Japan for the same stuff. In next month, I'm going to China for speaking for open source and this stuff. So this was how I entered, and I entered open source, and within a year I became a lab leader for them. It was something which I was not expecting from Linux Foundation mentorship one, but it shaped my whole career. Then I started building the stuff, and earlier what I was doing was I would be keeping the code, source code secret, and I won't tell anyone. I would be hiding all IPs and those stuff. But now I'm open to get ideas, involve the community into building some stuff. So I am leading multiple projects with open source with Linux Foundation, and some of those are mine. So this was how I
Very
started with.
cool. I just curious to get your thoughts on what does it mean to be a lab leader within the Linux Foundation? Do you specialize in a specific category or a topic? How do you identify opportunities that you want to spend time on? Can you share a little bit more about what that looks like?
So first of all, like I know people are quite confused about like maintainer and a lab leader. So I would just clarify those stuff. Maintainer is a guy who maintains the whole project, in which direction the project should move on and those stuff. Lab leader is a person who is directly involved with the stewardship of the particular Linux Foundation and involved in the voting rights and those for the main committee who sits for the Linux Foundation. Also, those are the person who decide the final flow of the project. So personally, how I do involve with a direction of the project and those stuff, I try to connect with different enterprise and different companies, CTOs and CEOs, whom I got their numbers or LinkedIn's during the summit and everything. Then I do contact them. I do share them some of the stuff. Like I created this stuff. I want some feedback regarding this and this stuff, and they give me feedback. On that basis, I start the direction of the project in that way, so that it can be more useful in that, because I'm from a founder's background, so I do know the meaning of like continuously feedback and working on that stuff. So currently me and my team work like this, like we get feedback from companies directly, and then we decide what should we will build next. And we also what we do for working on the project is like we create issue for every small things, so that people can involve easily to even solve some of the stuff. Because what I felt during my LFX mentorship was to solve the first bug in some open source repo is quite hard, because your code does not get accepted, or like the PR is just stalled there. So for me, I created a workflow where every people can just start coding, even at least some like 1 or 2 line of code. They can start with 1 or 2 line of code, and they can build up later. So this was how like a lab leader works.
That makes sense. That's super cool. And you kind of talked about like the challenges of finding the first bug or contribution into open source. Like, what would you recommend for folks interested in getting started, finding a project, figuring out like how to actually contribute? Like, what do you think are good steps or tips to give to folks?
Personally, for finding the project, first of all, the finding the project stuff is something I would prefer. Like I would select some project which I feel kind of cool, because working for something which you don't like does not make sense, even if it is quite useful. So what I believe is like you should work on something which you particularly master on or you are interested most in. So like I started to work with AI and decentralized technologies. So I did find some of the projects accordingly. And once I found the project, one thing which people do, which I found out, was directly start solving the project's issues by themselves. They believe that the direction of the project should be in this direction, and they start working on some project directly. Then it leads to the PR, which does not get accepted or merged. So what I believe is like every person who wants to contribute to open source should try to contact the maintainers in some way. Like today, in today's world, it's quite easy to get connected with anyone. So what I believe is like to connect with the maintainers first, to understand what's the direction of the project actually, and what does maintainer actually wants the people to solve. Then after knowing that, you can directly start solving the issues and those stuff.
I love that. I actually think that's a very smart approach to get to know the folks that are maintaining and kind of building the project. I think sometimes that step gets missed, but it's also critical to understand. I think the relationships under all of this is like it's not just the software that we all write and ship; it's actually the people that are actually supporting it. So very very cool. And then maybe shifting just a little bit. So you've been through this journey now of being a lab leader. You're also kind of building your own projects. Maybe share how those learnings are intertwined and how you leverage being in open source as a lab leader to then build your own company and your own project now, Caracal, around agentic runtime layers, and how you've thought about the two of these together.
Yeah, so like starting like what I get benefit from open source is something that I believe is like a networking part which you get in open source. You won't get in something where you directly start with some job or something, because like open source is something where people do connect. It's the main beauty of the open source is the transparency of the code and those stuff. You do see the project, and you even see the project failing at some points. So like if you see any project which is directly deployed, you don't see the backend part where projects do fail. It's not something that it's always garden is green on one side. It's like same stuff. So you see something working well on the production side, but when you see the code itself and you see the maintainers working hard for every step, working for next update and everything, it will be super helpful for you because it's something that you don't see daily, and you will be able to connect with the maintainers directly who are the builders of the particular project, instead of just starting with like the software engineering nowadays. It's not just about writing the code, because writing the code can be done easily by Copilot or Cloud Code and anything. It's more about like what should you code. So like it's something that to understand what should you code, you should ask someone who has faced the problem. Like particularly for open source, they are maintainers, so they do know what are the problem they are facing right now. So you should directly ask them instead of first spending 3 or 4 months understanding the problems first, because once you get to know the problems which maintainer do face, you can find solution for those parts. So with
I think
that
that's
stuff,
very
yeah.
smart. That makes sense. And maybe just shifting a little bit to Caracal, like how did you land on this problem specifically to solve? And then, maybe within that, talk about how you decided to make it open source, kind of what the community guidelines are, how you think about contributions, things like that.
Yeah, so about Caracal one, it started in the December when I was like a contact with a guy from Reddit. He was the Apex CTO of Reddit. So like I got to contact with him. There was a session where he was talking about security and AI stuff. So they were also working on similar stuff. They were working on security for AI and different algorithms for AI. So after that meet, like I talked with him for 20 minutes. I shared some of the insights which I found useful, and he also like shared some of the stuff. From that, what I found was like I should build something which would not just help AI agents to be more autonomous, because uh, people would be trying to make stuff more autonomous. But what I believe is like more than making the AI agents autonomous, you should focus on making the AI agents controllably autonomous. It means like you should be able to control the AI at the last point, because if you even reach AGI or those stuff, it won't be much useful if you can't control those stuff. So then I like the idea about Caracal sparked in December in the Japan summit, and just after that summit, I made a prototype, and then again in that whole loop, I started contacting different enterprises. I asked for the feedback and everything. Earlier, I started to build it as in proprietary code, because generally I was involved with the open source, but then I thought like why not to build it privately and those stuff for one part. But then it was kind of boring, because like for me it was boring because I like to involve with the community and those stuff, because as I was already involved with the Linux Foundation, what I thought was like I should open source this also, so that I can contact with different stuff. Because if I haven't open source my project, then I won't be here on the GitHub event also. Yeah. So like that was something which I found, that instead of making it private, I should open source it so that people can use it and get like I can even get the feedback, and I can show them that this is the transparency which I am giving you on my end, which I can give you. Yeah. So
That's
it's more
awesome.
about security one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then maybe share as you kind of dive into it a little bit, like how does the project work itself? Like how, talk a little bit around not just solving the problem of autonomous agents, but also providing control. Like how does the project work? How do they plug into it? Where do you see them being using the project?
Yeah, so talking about how the project Caracal works, it works in a two layer. First is the SDK and CLI layer, where you like what the client has to do is like has to add some of the SDK features and functions in their code bases, so that the Caracal can get the data and can understand how the project is working. There are some of the SDK functions and features which they have to install on their particular software. Once they install the particular software, there are three options which they can use. First is a Caracal core, which is terminal based. which means like something like SQL, or like where you write the whole commands and everything. It gives a superpower experience for the power users. And the second one is the terminal UI, where you will easily get the terminal UI, like complete UI in the terminal itself, so that the people who don't want to like play with the commands and everything, they can directly use the up arrow or down arrow directly for the whole stuff and like setuping whole stuff. And third is the enterprise one, where like what we do is like we created a gateway and a sidecar which would directly connect with the and like with the AI agents directly, so that every call to the network would be passed through that gateway and sidecar, so that we can even enforce. Like earlier what we did was just added the SDK part, but the problem which we faced was that AI agents could directly change the code or can surpass those parts easily, because they do have the like capacity to change the code and everything. So then to enforce the layer more precisely, we started to focus on the networking layers, which was more on the gateway and sidecars, like sidecar parts. So then we made a gateway where every call would be passed through it, so that it can directly get enforced on the agents directly. So
Super
in
cool.
this way, it directly works.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And then as far as kind of the policies that, an enterprise might use in that case, like where are you seeing the difference or the boundaries between what an open source user may use, or like non-enterprise customers as they think about this project? Like where do you see the balance between the two?
Yeah, so like what we planned the project was in two phases. We planned first phase for the startups who are like initially working to make their AI agents more autonomous, and the second part is for the enterprise, where they do find certain policies and some like they do have some compliance like compliance restrictions and everything. So we kept in mind both of them. So we have like for every stuff we have two things. Like even for the database, we have support for an SQLite directly file based system, and the other one is directly a Postgre into a cloud server. So that we divided both of the stuff, because even if there is a small project which people do want to use Caracal for it, so they don't need to set up 16 GB Docker files or whole stuff. They can directly start with an SQLite based small structure. We also have integrated a Kafka, like we have integrated Kafka for like immutable ledger and those stuff. But the small project does not need the Kafka and those stuff. So for them, we have also included directly the file based changes. So we have made a completely two sectors where small projects can also use Caracal for their use cases, and big projects who do deploy their Docker on Kubernetes and those stuff, they can also easily use the Caracal with the compliance and whole restrictions.
That's awesome. And then I maybe talk a little bit around what you're seeing built with Caracal today, like anything that you're able to share in terms of use cases or types of agents, where you're seeing kind of like interesting traction with the project itself.
Yeah, so talking about that traction one is like I am directly connected with two or three projects, which is like I'm connected with an Reddit's project. I'm also connected with an open search project, which are like trying to get the internal feedback from them on the Caracal product. And third is the use case in the Linux Foundation Labs itself. The Linux Foundation Labs, which are working in AI sector or those stuff, they are using it currently for their particular testing and those stuff, so that they can later deploy it when they have to move it on the production level and those. So we are currently focusing only on open source project first, and
Cool.
then would be involving with other enterprise and those stuff.
Got it. Super helpful. And then maybe kind of double clicking on like the types of experiences within Caracal for like enforcing policies and things like that. Like what types of policies do you see being the most effective within the agent workflow? Are there specific decisions that you're able to like safeguard against? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious how you've thought about that, and which ones to include, which ones to delegate to the enterprise to decide on.
Yeah, so particularly how Caracal works, it works in a three layer. First is the principal. Principal is any user or agent or service who wants to use any resource directly. So they are the principal. Then second part is the policies. policies is something that there is a maximum limitation for some user or some agent to use it. And the third layer is the mandate. So like just giving the policy does not means that agent can directly use the particular stuff. They do have to issue a mandate, which is a time-based token, a cryptographic token, which they would get to use a particular resources. So we are more focusing on AI agent infrastructure. Like the companies like Okta or Auth0 do provide the similar Auth stuff. But what we are more focusing on is like something like for every particular task, different token can be given to a particular AI agent. We have also involved a stuff which we call a delegation chain. So what is the delegation chain? It's something like if an AI, like if a user gets a policy where they can use some stuff, so what they can do is like they can create a mandate and they can transfer that mandate to an AI agent directly, so that that AI agent can use the resources on behalf of a user. But the company would be deciding what are the policies for each of the AI agents, and they can use it in that way. So it's like it's more based on AI agent structure as a primary users, and the users like as in human as in secondary involving in the project here.
Very cool. Maybe shifting a little bit now that we've kind of jumped into the details of it, do you want to pull up a demo of the project so that folks can see how to use it and how to interact
Yeah.
with it?
Yeah, so like I have like already made a video about it because it do involve some of the odd stuff. So like I already
Perfect. That sounds
signed up
good.
and cut that part. Yeah, so I guess
All
my
right.
screen is visible now.
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now. There you go. You should be able to hit play. There you go.
Yeah.
You might want to zoom in a little bit if you can, just so that folks can see.
Like
There we go. I'll zoom in from
maybe
there. Go ahead.
yeah. So first of all, like as I told, there is an CLI based stuff which is Caracal directly, where which you can directly use from pip install Caracal core. So once you install that stuff, first is the CLI based structure where you can directly use Caracal agent or those stuff directly from here. All the commands are you can see using the help command. But today I would be more focusing on the terminal UI base so that everyone can understand the stuff easily. So for the terminal UI, you have to type Caracal-flow. So after you click the Caracal-flow, you will get an onboarding step where it would ask you regarding the configuration steps, whether you want to use an SQLite or Postgre one. So like right now, I would first create, like during the enterprise, it would ask you to create one principal. So starting with a principal for an AI agent named, assuming like Jarvis right now. So when you like create a principal named Jarvis, it would ask you about an email, which you would be the person who is using that particular particular principal, and it would ask you about the principal type, which are three types: agent, user, or services. So you can directly use the tab autocomplete for it. So like here it's an agent. So I would just give an agent and you will be able to give a mandate validity for how much time it can use the particular features for those stuff. So there is an onboarding step for the user who can directly start to work with Caracal easily. Then you get an main menu, which would provide you a principal hub. Principal hub is the place where you can directly create or register new agents, list them, and can generate a cryptographic key for every agent. So like there is an agent which we created on the first step, and I would create like a user based on my name, which I would be like giving it the permissions which I want to create a principal on behalf of myself. So I've created a complete principal as Rehan right now. So once you complete, it would be given a principal ID, which you can use it later for different ledger and mandate stuff. So now you can see there are two principals, and you can generate a cryptographic key for every principal, which would be following the elliptical cycle algorithm, which would be a secure algorithm for it. Yeah, so this was the part where we are focusing on principal one. Second is regarding the authority policies. What are the maximum rights a particular principal can use? So currently, first, if we create a principle based on, like for me as in Rayan, I would create a principle, like a policy for it. So once a user create a policy, he would be asked about the resource which you want to give the particular principle, and like what are the resources which you allow the particular principle. So here I would, for example, I would be giving a API call to OpenAI every command to the user Rayan. So it would then ask you about what are the type of call they can use. So here, assuming that it can do an API call function, so once you enter this, it would ask you about a delegation chain. So as I told earlier, delegation is something where what are the restriction which you apply, that if I am given something, then can I delegate it to an agent or can I delegate it to some service? So if I like create yes, then it would ask me the depth of delegation. Means if the depth is 2, which means like I can give my policy to one particular agent, which the agent can use a service on it. So it's an delegation of depth 2. So it works in that way. So
That's
once
cool.
you create it, yeah, so once you create it, it would give you a policy ID for that stuff, and you can use it for different stuff. So once like you get to see both of them active, you can even edit and those stuff. Third part is regarding the authority ledger. Authority ledger is complete immutable history of complete delegation or policy and those level. So right now we haven't started with it yet. So it would be empty right now. But once you like set up the SDK and those stuff, you can use it directly from here.
So
And
in that case, you'd
yeah,
have a full chain of all the interactions and delegations from principal and user with that policy associated with it, and
yeah.
then any other like interactions. Is that the right way to think about
Yeah,
that?
it would show a complete chain where like if some user has transferred some policy to some agent, it would show a complete history that agent has used. So that what we were planning in future is to feed those stuff into an MCP, so that you can directly ask an AI agent directly to understand what was the transaction among whole organization. So it was something which we are planning to feed that data into an AI agent, so that people can directly chat with and understand what and like what person like transferred what authority on that AI agent in that way. Yeah.
That's really cool. And one thing I'm curious about is kind of walk through the setup process here. So you as a user can set up your own principal agents, but I imagine um, a team, for example, if you're an enterprise or other smaller teams, could also pick from other principal agents and add their own associated user credentials and delegations to it as well. So you kind of have a suite of catalogs of principals, users, and policies that they can select from that grows over time to allow a much either fine grained or broader enforcement mechanism across agents. Is that kind of the way to think about it?
Yeah, so like you can like for right now you can add agent or like principal and the person who is admin. Like currently I am using the product on the open source one. So I would be the admin. I can give rights to some other users who can edit this stuff. So those are the only persons who can edit and create a new principal. So once like if my team is of 3 people and we are using 6 AI agents, so what you can do is like register this nine like principle on this software, so that the whole chain between like AI agents as like actors and the human as an actor would be completely in a same level, so that you can directly see the whole company running with on the both view, like the humans and the AI
Yeah.
agents both.
That makes sense. Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to understand, and also I'm curious to get your point of view on, is um, the ability to create agents is pretty lightweight. So from an enterprise or even a team being able to track, you kind of need this embedded into the agent creation flow. So I'm curious, like, how are you thinking about either distribution or plugging into agent frameworks and tools so that it's easy to be able to capture that earlier in the creation flow versus later in the creation flow?
Yeah, so for that part, we already have the SDK for this stuff. As I told, you just have to do pip install Caracal-core. It is already registered on PyPI. So once you install that package, then you will get a whole set of functions which you can directly like join as a decorator on particular agent. It's the whole framework of SDK for Caracal is not dependent on any type of particular framework. It is like something which you can use for any framework. You just have to add specific line of code for some agents and those stuff. Right now it may be a quite mid where you need to be a software developer, but what we are focusing is something that if we can directly add it in a decorator directly, where even a non-coder who just want to vibe code the app, those people also can easily integrate Caracal into their workflow. Right now, yeah, I know that they do have to know about the software engineering and those stuff right now, but we would be focusing on a decorator directly, so they can directly integrate those stuff without having like more knowledge about software and those stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Part of this is like it kind of needs, and I like that it's a standalone SDK, but part of it is, it seems like you kind of need this enforcement wherever agents are going to be built, right? And so the question ends up being is like, should they start with the SDK first, or should they, kind of have this embedded in other areas? And then the other piece that's kind of interesting to think about is like, from a observability and kind of telemetry, it's not just the events that the agents are taking, but the intent and kind of trajectory that you're seeing from an agent across the reasoning chain. And so I'm curious how you thought about like what information to consume around the events to make the policy not just enforceable, but also give a better, visibility across the agent reasoning and kind of the intents that it was passed to or delegated from another agent.
Yeah, so for that part, like the part where we are different from observability is something that we do collect for any observability. You do have to add some of the SDK in a particular project. And the part which where we enforce the laws is something which we provide in the gateway. So those are like two different layers where we first collect the data from the SDK observability layer. And the second one is the enforcement layer, which we provide on the particular gateway. So what any team has to do is like once they complete their complete project, they just have to add some of the lines before their agent, and where they do involve the call to any tool or like MCP or A2A protocol. So they just have to add a one or two line before that part, and like they have to set up a Docker where like it's something which only the big teams would require. Once you set up that Docker, you will get a gateway where you can like set up a URL from that gateway, so that every call to the network would be passing through like it's something like firewall. So every call would be passed through
Got
that
it.
gateway. So it would just block something which is not enforced in the code itself. So it's more on the fail secure part. Means something is not passed with the gateway won't be permitted directly, so that if some team has missed something to add through the gateway, they can directly like see what they have missed in the particular code base, and they can add the particular stuff right there, so that whole stuff can go through the gateway and they can enforce those stuff.
Got it. So like ultimately that's where you see the main enforcement is through gateway traffic
Yeah,
effect. Got it. Got it. That makes sense. So
it's like SDK is observability and gateway is enforcement.
that makes sense. And maybe we talked a little bit about like traction, but like curious, like how are you bringing visibility to the project and kind of like adoption right now? Like what types of things are you doing around that right now?
Yeah, so like for like as like for like people to use the direct software, like in this video, like I have like a complete UI where people can like directly use the UI interface for the whole dashboard and stuff. There where they can directly change the stuff. They don't have to do it like manually in the TUI. They can directly for the enterprises or the companies who do require more stuff, like they have more than 5 agents or more staff than 10 people, they can use that particular UI where they would be given a complete interface like any tool like PostHog or something or Datadog, where they do have a complete interface. They can directly change stuff from the particular interface itself. So in the particular video, like I do have that part also in like ahead of the video. Yeah.
Very cool. And then maybe just transitioning a little bit, but like, where do you want to take the project? Like, where do you see this evolving to? Features, capabilities, things like that.
Yeah, so main about like the future of the project is something which I want to focus is like once we transfer to the like once we complete the observability and enforcement part, we would be evolving the whole project towards the direction where we can provide a secure deployment or production for any enterprise company for their AI agents. We would be focusing completely on those part to make AI agents more autonomous, but on the same part, more controllable also. So we would be creating everything around those stuff, which we would feel in the roadmap. It's something like which would help AI to be more trustable and autonomous because right now enterprise don't trust AI agent because they do take some actions which does not like match with their compliance of the particular company. So we would be focusing on the whole stuff where enterprise can trust the agent to take action as an autonomous actor, like as itself, without a human being involved in the particular loop.
Super cool. I really like that as an approach. I think like that gives to your point, like being able to pull that out. And I mean, one thing that becomes interesting is over time, as you have this suite of agents and policies, to your point, like being able to track and make that, like you actually could embed some interesting feedback loops around actions that were successful or not, and like which policies were or were not successful. So really, really interesting to hear that. I'm curious if you have any other pieces of the demo. Feel free to continue on. I just wanted to jump
Yeah,
on
like
that.
one thing I would be adding in those stuff, like what was one of my goal was self-evolving policies. So that was something which I wanted to create in future. Maybe once I like start get some data and understand the companies more detail. So like I would be focusing on self-adapting policies where companies don't have to like every time they don't have to give permissions to the agent. It would be something that it would understand the intent of the company and then give the permission accordingly. So that is something which I would be trying in future. But like for right now, for like the complete demo one, I would just show the UI and those stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was actually it's interesting you say that because I think as you know go further into the future on this is you assume agents can read markdown and very easily and kind of like consume that, and so the ability to like generate an improved policy based off of company intents is actually kind of interesting, and you could actually like self-train like a policy enforcement agent, things
Yeah,
like that,
like majorly on RL and those stuff, reinforcement learning for those stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually it's a pretty cool idea. And then I imagine too with like, you know, both from DevSecOps personas and like IT ops, like you could actually have some interesting capabilities around being able to utilize this as like, you know, a way to scale teams, but also, you know, manage the fleet of agents that they would have. So very, very cool. Any other things that you want to jump in on the demo?
Yeah, like just I would just skip some of the part, which is like what I told earlier, it was the mandate stuff. So
Mhm.
like as you can see, there would be an issuer who would be issuing the mandate. Mandate is like a time-based token given to any agent. So like here, like as in Ryan, I have given my AI agent Jarvis some of the authority. So once you give the authority to the AI agent, there would be some time constraint where AI agent would be able to use the particular tokens for that particular time base. So this was on the mandate side. And you can also revoke some of the mandate right here so that you can directly get something back. If you're even given permission of something, you can even take it back from the AI agent or from the user. Also, the next part of the delegation chain, which I mentioned, the whole chain and whole like structure of those part would be shown here. Yes, like the part where you asked me about the like a small project can use the Caracal and the enterprise can use it. So this was that stuff which I told, which
Uh-huh.
is there is an infrastructure layer which provides two type of deployment. First is lightweight deployment for small projects. If they want to use, they don't need Kafka or they don't need Docker for it. So they can directly start the infrastructure. By default, the infrastructure would be off, so that Kafka and those stuff would be off, so that even it can be run on a small low-end device. And if some enterprise want to use it for an infrastructure level, they just have to turn on the infrastructure setup. And once they turn on, the whole Docker would be self-pulled and would be directly connected with the system. So then they can even deploy it on the Kubernetes directly. And regarding regarding the part where they can directly sync the data from the local to the particular enterprise suite is this part where they just have to add a token. Like they just have to add a token in the system. So there is an enterprise license from the UI. Once they get enterprise license from the UI, they just have to enter it right here. So it will get sync from this project directly to the UI part. So this, I will just skip some of the part here. So once you open the UI, it's something like this, where it would ask you about the authentication part. Once you authenticate yourself, it would give you an onboarding step where you can create the principal and those stuff directly from this onboarding step through the UI. We follow multi-tenancy and multi-workflow system where every user can make multiple workflows for them, and every workspace would have multiple users or multiple team working in itself. So you just have to give a name. Currently I have given the name Garudex Labs. Once you give the name to the organization, it would ask you to invite any member. You can invite a member as admin, member, and just a viewer. Viewer are those for the transparency basis. If you want to add someone just to view the project and those stuff. So this is the UI which enterprises can use it for their particular stuff, where they can get the whole stuff right here. So there is a setup guide. There are 6 steps setup, which we already did. So it's all ticked. It would give you the code snippet, which you directly have to add on the particular system. So these are the principles which you can rotate the keys. If my key is compromised, you can even rotate the keys so that you can get a new key for a particular principle, which you can use for the mandate and those stuff. So it's completely similar to what we used in the TUI, but it's something which it's more user friendly. So
I mean, it's kind of nice if you're if you're not in the terminal, or often this becomes just a nice UI enforcement policy. But if you were more spending time in that, it's simple. And to your point, all you have to do is sync it with the token for your this account, so it makes it kind of easy to manage compliance and guidelines from that perspective too. So
yeah, it's very easy for if anyone to directly even you can directly check for the past validation past. So once you add the SDK for any particular stuff, it can even run the checks for you directly on the code base, so that you can get that the signature is missing for the agent, so that you can directly add the signature code base in the particular signature snippet in the code base directly. So it can also completely check your code base and can add stuff on your behalf for enforcing the policies and those stuff. And it's similar to what I described, the policies, ledger, the delegation stuff, whole delegation chain and those stuff, and even regarding the team structure. So you can even add someone in your structure as you can see the team management page, where you can manage the whole team as in humans. This page is just for humans, where you can add your team members right here, so that you all can work together on the particular admin dashboard. And you can add an analytics, which is for the observability part. So the part which you asked me about how they can directly add it in their code bases. So this is we have also provided something like this UI, where they would be given a code snippet which they directly has to add in their code base in both Python and Node currently. Currently we have provided for Python and Node.js. So they just have to set up it on their current code base, and it would then directly sync all the stuff directly right here. And the gateway for enforcement layer would be shown here. And for any enterprise, if they want to download the whole data for any compliance report of any SOC2 or any particular other stuff, they can even download it in JSON, CSV, or PDF. And they can even like just take the issued mandate or access denied mandate, and they can directly filter from those stuff also. So like you can directly see the whole stuff right from here, and every
Yeah.
user would get a profile, like which would allow you to give some of the keys which you can directly add in your code base.
Interesting. This is super cool to see. And then, like, I guess from this right now, are you seeing much, like, where are you seeing enterprise traction right now in this right now? Is it more startup focused? Is it like larger enterprises, bigger teams?
Currently, the focus are those companies who are like evolving right now. Like they are newly evolving, but now every company wants to make AI employees and want to remove human from the loop. So we are getting traction from those side particularly, which are like Series A or Series B startup who wants to focus on autonomy side, and they can even like they don't have to focus much on the compile and stuff for right now. They can use it like right now directly, and we are getting the traction from those particular sector which are not too small startups, but they are not even enterprise right now.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I
And even
imagine
it
the
can
majority
yeah,
of users right now are probably, they're agent first builders and really thinking through like,
yeah.
oh, we've already crossed the chasm of, we know we need agents, and now we are saying like, how do we provide and delegate better permission and authority? So they're kind of like, two or three clicks beyond where some other, organizations may not be in the maturity adoption curve.
Because it's something which enterprise can afford. Like they can have a team of 10 or 15 or 20 people who can work on this stuff, but the startups whose entire team is of 20 or 50 people, they can't afford their half of their team working on just the authorization part and those stuff. So
Yeah,
they can directly just add the plugin on their code base, so they can get something on like which enterprises do get right now.
that makes sense. And are
And
you
like
do you see
yeah,
yourself, and not just at like within the authority policies, but do you assume like, um, doing any other like ERP tracking on spend or token usage or like things like that that could be interesting beyond just like policies in there? Because I imagine like the other part of seeing the events is the ability to see like how much is being consumed from like the models and the actual compute side of things. And so there might be some interesting stuff that you could do to, um, kind of to your point on continuous enforcement policies, but essentially like make that even better, more predictive and higher quality.
yeah, like the whole economic layer, we can add those stuff right now. But what I got from people which I was sharing the project with and getting the feedback back was that they do have a particular sector where they can like get a fund for particular setup for the authorization layer. The part where it's more focused on the economic part, which is on the token basis and those stuff, it's something which current startups or enterprise don't have budget allotted to, so that it's more tough to like provide that service to the enterprise which they don't have a particular budget for. But it's more easy to get into like startups and enterprise which they have already allotted budget to. So we can like just start with the authority policy, and then we can expand in like whole AI autonomy space. Like the whole AI autonomy space is quite huge. It's like more than multi-billion-dollar market and those stuff. So then we can evolve in those space also.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's a very large category. It's just interesting to think through, like, if you're already like, building and managing the policies, can you also consume other data around like how to, make the policies better? So this is super cool. I'm excited, and maybe where can people start to interact with the project and the community?
Yeah, so like today, today itself, I just before this mate, 4 or 5 hours earlier, like I released the 0.6 version, which is like just a version before version 1, which I would be launching, me and my team would be launching in next week. So the people who wants to contribute, like we also have the whole documentation stuff. Like I would just show the documentation page also. So people can go on the docs.garudexlabs.com where they can get the whole documentation of the project. They can get the architecture, they can understand the project directly, and they can directly start involving with the project directly. So the whole code base is like right now documented, so they can directly start with the documentation itself, where for every step we have given a quick start, and we have also given like examples and those stuff, so that it gets more easier to start with for like any guy who wants to like just build something autonomous AI agent or those stuff. So
Super
they can
cool.
start with this part.
Yeah, I love seeing this. I also, it's actually cool to see some of these examples here and like reference architectures to pull in of like what that should look like. Because to your point, on the delegation of like how many steps should I delegate to? Like that's an interesting question to really think about. When, and it also depends on like the multiple spawning of different agents, etc. So it's actually really cool to see this as a layout.
Yeah, actually earlier, like as an Anthropic company, so earlier Anthropic was focusing on agent, like everyone were focusing on hierarchical agents, which means there would be a parent agent and there would be multiple child agent and sub-child agent, and in that way. So that would be a complete tree. But the recent research paper released by the Anthropic, which said that they would be like how human involved, like there are 5 people in a room, so they don't interact in a way that only leaders would be talking to everyone. They interact in randomness way. So for that part, like if the future is in that direction, they would need the delegation depth and those stuff. So for like focusing on like the future part of AI agents, we have involved the part of like delegation, like depth and delegation chain stuff.
Got it. That's super cool. And then how can someone contribute to the project and participate in it?
Yeah, so starting to contribute for the project, it's quite easy. You can just go on the Garudex Labs Caracal project, and like there are issues already mentioned on the project. And to get started with the project, it's quite easy. Like as I told, you just have to install, like do the pip install Caracal core, and once you install the like package, so you just have to start using it directly from Caracal flow. Once you write Caracal flow, the whole interface of the terminal would be started, so that you can directly contribute based on the issues right here. And if you are like if you have any confusion on those stuff, you can directly contact me on Discord or those stuff, that like they can even involve with me or other maintainers, so that they can start building and contribute to the Caracal project directly. And if there is something which they do have doubt, they like there is all they can always reach out to the documentation page, or even they can reach out to me directly for those stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to your first comment of like how you got in
Yeah.
it, which is like getting to know the maintainers and learning what you want. So maybe even just double clicking, like if you said, hey, what are some issues that you would love to see contributors jumping in on, like anything that you would love to see them fixing or pushing things forward, like anything like that that you could share with the folks on the stream?
Yeah, so like first of all, the problem which I started with the like in this meet was like they should know like the maintainer closely for that particular project stuff only. Like I have given that open source support call, which like they can directly get connected to me for 15 or 30 minutes, so that they can directly start working on the project directly. Currently, what we are more focusing on is to make the SDK as simpler as we can. Like as you told earlier, that currently the whole software is something which would require you to understand the software part. But what we want is like the authority part should be as transparent as it could be. So we are focusing on the part where the SDK would be like so simple that even a vibe coder can easily understand the SDK structure of Caracal and those stuff. So like currently the development is in that direction. We are like making the SDK more simpler, so that they can directly like integrate it without changing anything on their particular code base. So for that, people can start contributing on those stuff. They can even give suggestion to me on like directly creating issues. They can directly jump on a call with me from the documentation. Like there is an like directly to connect with me. Then they can directly get like jump in a call with me and then directly give me suggestion, which I can implement in the like for the project roadmap and those stuff.
Very cool. I think this is awesome. I think it's unique in the sense of being able to provide both an open source project that does this, but also just the glide path to enterprise. So super exciting to see this progression on the project, and also kudos again for sharing your journey of becoming, a leader in the open source labs for the Linux Foundation and kind of the things you built around it. It's very, very good for others to hear the journey and super exciting. So thanks for sharing that as well for all the folks on the stream.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was good pleasure of me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks all for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. And have a wonderful week. And we'll catch up soon on the next stream. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day and evening. Take care.